Before we get into today's show, I've got a little tiny favor to ask. If you found us and you're about to listen to the show and you get value, I'm assuming you like it because you're here. The only thing I will ever ask of you, ever, is that you like and subscribe. And if you're super kind, go make a comment. I love when we get comments on our email. I love when people text me and say that was a great episode. But the greatest honor you could give us is the podcast platform that you're listening to this on right now. Just go down, scroll down, like it, subscribe to it, hit that little button that says follow. And if you're kind, make a comment. It absolutely revolutionizes for us why we do the show and how we do the show, and it helps us grow it. So that's all I will ever ask of you. Now, enjoy today's show. I hope it's a gripping one. Clark and I have just finished recording this episode, and it was super fun for me to do this concept. Today's episode, we look back at 5 things each. Clark's top 5, my top 5, just things that in hindsight, we look back and say, hey, if I just changed that thing, or if I just done this thing, my life would look so much different right now. And so there are 10 serious takeaways here, 10 things that you can implement right now, today, or pass on to your sons, your daughters, or a friend who might, hey, you might want to listen to this. So we take a walk down memory lane. We take 5 topics that are pertinent to Clark, pertinent to me. Say, look, that would have been cool if I had done it this way and not that. So without further ado, let's get into these 10 gold nuggets that you can implement in your life or share with a friend. All right, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Burn Your Boats podcast. I'm here with my co-host, Clark Lunt.
Hey, guys. Welcome.
All righty. Clark and I were just chatting before we recorded today's episode, and we had quite a few ideas about, what it is that we were going to talk about. And then we stumbled across this one in our conversation. We're like, damn it, this is good. So, what we were talking about is I was reviewing this social media post about Magic Johnson back in the day was a big commodity. Everybody was after him. And so Converse offered him $100,000 lump sum to go, name a shoe after Magic Johnson. And equally at the same time, Nike offered him $100,000 worth of shares, of Nike shares, and $1 per shoe. And Clark, do you know which deal Magic Johnson took in hindsight?
Well, David, I'd like to think that that Magic Johnson took the dollar per shoe because we can kind of get into a time machine. But I get a feeling as a young 18-year-old, probably not growing up with a lot of money like most of us, I'm assuming he probably went for the quick money and took the 100K.
No, he took the rip, all right. Everybody takes the rip, right?
Yep.
Now, we all know who took the Nike deal.
Right.
That was Michael Jordan, right? Now, Michael Jordan made a couple of $1 billion from that decision. Magic Johnson made $100,000 from that decision. But guess what? We probably, maybe not as big or profound, but we all, at any age, your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s, we all are encountered with these little things, that seem little at the moment, but in hindsight can actually be quite big. And so what we did, we decided to discuss today, like, do we have any of these kind of Magic Johnson moments in our lives? And, we were shooting, like, yeah, I could do it. So we said, look, let's write out 5 things, thereabouts, where we whistled past opportunity or we weren't mature enough to make the right decisions. And so we're going to lay them out to you. I don't know Clark's 5. Clark doesn't know my 5. That's going to keep it interesting for us. Okay. But what we're going to do is we're just going to look back at our lives, and these are things that could have happened yesterday. These are things that could have happened a year ago, 10 years ago. But just at that time, I wish I'd made a different decision, right? And these will probably resonate with you. And so as an investor, as a human, as somebody who lives in today's age, and most of our listeners are between 45 and, 60, I would say. Hopefully you're younger so that you can pick up a little bit more of these nuggets, if you will. But we're going to lay them out. Just 5 things, 5 points in our lives where we were presented with things, and just be life itself, we're presented with things where, in hindsight, we'd have made a different decision. And so with that being said, Clark, let's kick it all off. Let's, tell me in your life, one of the things in hindsight, you're like, yeah, could have done that differently, should have done that differently, might have made a different decision then. Life is life. We are where we are. But in order to make this actionable and useful and entertaining, tell me what, kind of number one, what would you, in hindsight, have done differently?
I think it's easy, and I think a lot of us are guilty of this about, just kind of acting in the moment. You tend to act emotional. You tend to just kind of go where the water flows in life, and you don't really know why. So my number one thing, and this is not number 2 or 3. Like, I know that I needed to do this one thing, and I didn't do a good job of it, and I'm starting to implement it now, is being able to take a step back, David, and say, why am I doing anything, right? Like, why am I going to this job? Why am I buying this real estate, right? And so if I can step back and say, okay, where do I actually want to be a year from now, 5 years from now? And then look at that and say, okay, I actually did it this year. I sat down and wrote like a 3-page, it's called a vivid vision. And I said, okay, where do I want to be in 1 year? Okay. And that's not just business, right? That could be my health, my relationships, my income, everything, right? And then where do I want to be in like 5 years? And then take those and then reverse engineer back into steps that need to be taken to be able to achieve that. Well, at least now I've given myself a personal roadmap. It's not your roadmap, it's my roadmap, right? And so I think that is something, looking back, that is certainly, I didn't have any roadmap. I was just kind of, the wind blew me to the left on Tuesday. And guess what, David? I went to the left on Tuesday. So for everyone listening, I think that it may be experiencing similar challenges, is I would sit down, take a deep breath, count to 10, and write out a vision as to what you want to see yourself in 12 months, 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is. And then gives you actionable steps to work back from. So that would be my first biggest thing to start with. But me and you are different. Me and you are at different points in our life. You have a family with a beautiful wife and 3 kids. I'm not married. I don't have a kid. So you probably will have a different answer. So what would you do with your number one thing?
So, I think that's super important. The idea of actually what you manifest. We all know Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich. You actually manifest what it is that you visualize. And right. So I really like that, what you've just said, Clark, is that in order to actually do anything or achieve anything, you have to first of all sit down, write it out. Because guess what in life? Most things are not impossible. I have my neighbors. They are middle of the road employees, right? They have 3 young kids under 10, and they are right now, traveling around the world with their 3 kids. They sent over a video from Borneo yesterday, right? They're on the back of and they took their kids out of school. They're homeschooling them. And for most people, this is madness. What, you're traveling around the world with your kids? They finished school last year. They headed out straight after school broke up last year, and they're out Southeast Asia, Australia,
wow,
South America with their kids. This is something that, but they visualized it.
Yeah.
They said it about 3 years ago. They said, we're going to do this at that point in time. And guess what? They did it. And now they're doing it.
Good for that.
For everybody else, that might sound like a nightmare, but it's a good analogy. It's a good analogy that if you don't visualize anything, you get nowhere. You just get blown around. So I think it's really powerful, Clark. And I could take a leaf out of your book, your sit down, write it down, vivid vision. I'm going to kick off with mine. I would have done differently. I spent, after I left college and all that kind of stuff, and I started working for people, I spent too long doing it. I spent too long in a career that I didn't enjoy, right? Because it was safe and I knew where it was and I got paid every month, but I hated it. And I wasted probably 13 years of my life working a job that I didn't like. And I'm pretty flexible, you know what I mean? I'm not afraid to walk out the door.
Right.
But each time I tried to walk out the door this is when I was in a construction project management business, my company would just offer me more money. And I fell for it every single time. Seems like I was easily bought, you know? And so they would give me more money, they give me a different title. But no, I would have, in hindsight, I would have left that job sooner. I would have gone out on my own sooner. And, I'm listening just this morning, the daily podcast is interviewing a bunch of people from the federal government who, unfortunately, for them, are losing their jobs and whatnot. And they're absolutely, because they were federal employees. So they thought they're done till they're 65. And now they find themselves 35 in the middle of an absolute, nightmare of their lives being turned upside down because somebody's made a decision on their part. I would have taken life into my own hands sooner. I'm glad I did. I'm self-employed since 2000, right? So it's not like this is recent, but I would have gone work for myself even sooner. I would not have wasted as many years as I did working for other people. So that's one thing I would definitely have done differently. Clark, what's another one you'd have done differently?
Are you saying that those folks maybe should have burned their boats earlier? The people that just got laid off?
Well, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. They had nice jobs. They were ready to go. Everything was good in their world, So no, they got their boats burned, and I'm sad for them. But listen, let's talk about your next one. Give me another observation about things that, in hindsight, were things you've changed.
So I think that a lot of us, I went to burn my boats, W-2 job, went over, started my own real estate kind of company, bought a franchise. I do think in hindsight, and as I continue to kind of pivot, is it's not about how do I do this thing, and that's why I love the book Who Not How. Is my second step is once I've written my vivid vision and I kind of know where the water is flowing in terms of where I actually want to go, like an actual plan, a game plan, a playbook. It's like an NFL team going out there and just not having plays, and they're like, just go out, right? Like they would never do that. It's ridiculous. Just go out for a pass, right? So now that I've got the routes figured out, looking back, it's but who do I need to surround myself with that is smarter, faster, stronger, who has skill sets that I don't have, as opposed to me just trying to do it all at once and saying, how do I figure out how to do every single step from A to Z, right? Well, there's lots of steps in there that even when I do figure it out, I'm not going to be very good at it, right? So it's who do I surround myself with people that have better ideas in those spots? So I think the second thing for me is, again, instead of just running into the battle, David, now that I've kind of got the game plan, let me look around and see who I'm running into battle with. And maybe it's the right people, maybe it's the wrong people, maybe they need to be moved around the chessboard a little bit. But instead of just blasting into battle, which is kind of my personality, is to just, what is it? The aim or shoot first and then aim, or whatever that saying is to have a better understanding of who I surround myself with, talk to them, ask them questions, pick their brains. Why are you successful in this? And being able to figure out who is going to enable me to get to the next step, as opposed to me just figuring out every single thing on my own, knowing that a lot of those things I'm not going to be very good at. So again, kind of taking a step back and smelling the roses a little bit. David, you're up. Number 2.
Yeah. I'm looking back at the time in which I was alive, right? At the early, let's say 1995 to 2001, 2002, we had, the dot-com boom, right? And, I tried my hand at buying single stocks at the time. And I think how a lot of that ended up, right? Even for people And this was, really, I don't know if ETFs were a thing back then, but imagine in the mid 90s, you were able to buy just an internet ETF, right? You'd have had the winners, you'd have had the losers for sure, right? But just an internet ETF, right? Something that caught up and basically caught all the Mag 7, let's say, in a thematic sense, right? The theme is the internet, right? The ETF is, an internet ETF that I've been able to buy into because it was very clear that the internet was going to be a thing. But I didn't. I invested in individual stocks. I invested in the hot button stocks of the day, and I got my ass handed to me, and therefore I hated investing in stocks for, the next decade, if you will. And so it's fair to say I lost about 15 or 20 years and that's why I got into real estate, because real estate was the only thing I believed in. Everything else was just some hocus pocus. But in hindsight, given the tools that are available today, I'm reading a book called The Coming Wave right now, and it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating about where, AI is going to take us in the next 10, 15, and 20 years, where robotics are going to take us, and where biotechnology is going to take us in the next 10 or 15 years. These three themes are going to power the future. And rather than trying to pick a winner right now and say, I think, Anthropic is going to win, or OpenAI are going to win, or the Mag 7 are going to win, you can invest right now in AI ETFs, in robotics ETFs, like bots or something like that, BOTZ, or you can invest in biotech ETFs. iShares have a great biotech ETF, and just sit on that basket of growth. And so I invest in AIQ, which is a global AI ETF. And so I believe in these thematic concepts, but rather than investing in a single stock, I would, looking backwards, I wished I'd known how to invest in broad-based ETFs, not the S&P where I'm catching everything, but in these really high growth thematic spaces. Like, as I said, imagine you could have just bought the internet ETF in 1995. You'd be sitting on a few dollars right now. So just in hindsight, I wished I'd bought, broad-based internet type ETFs back in the day, or these high growth spaces. But I can do it now. And so that would be one thing. Financially, I think anybody out there right now should look at where the coming wave is and invest in those spaces. If you and your financial advisor agree on that. So there's the disclaimer right there. But that is what I would do differently. I wouldn't just get burned by, a single stock and then say, I hate it, I'm just going to go into real estate. So I'm full real estate because I got burned. And I wished, looking back hindsight, I wished I'd have stayed invested, but just known more and had access to broad-based ETFs in thematic concepts that I believed in. So there you go, Clark. We can change that going forward.
Yeah. It's ironic because, you're much more into ETFs. You've spoken a lot about it, a lot more on this podcast. To me, I don't really understand it. So I don't know if it's a strength or weakness, because I'm just staying focused mainly on real estate. I don't understand crypto. I don't understand a lot of different things, and I don't really want to understand it. I'm not passionate about it. Right. And so it's something that for me, it's easier to just stay in the real estate lane, good, bad, or indifferent. But ironically, my next thing, David, that number 3 for me is looking back and being able to say, okay, now I've got the roadmap, right? I'm trying to find the people to surround myself with that add equal parts of success, just that I can bring value to them. But then the question that I have, and I didn't quite nail it down the way that I should have, is the actual asset class, right? Like, what do I want to do? Do I want to be a small business acquisitions guy? Do I want to just fix and flip houses? Do I want to build houses? Do I want to buy Airbnbs and run them? Do I want to run long-term rentals, right? And I think that one of the biggest mistakes one of the mistakes I've made, and I think a lot of people, especially in real estate, make this mistake, is they're just doing a little bit of everything, right? They've got like 2 Airbnbs, they've got 3 long-term rentals, they're building a house down the street, and you just lose momentum into, there's so many different things you can do in real estate, right? Like just, you were talking about ETFs and stocks and things like that. Just underneath the real estate umbrella of self-storage and commercial multifamily and ALFs and triple net lease and commercial and Airbnbs and the residential house hacking, pad splits, right? Rent by the room. There's all these different things, right? And they all work for some people in some areas, right? But they don't work if you do them all. And so for me, staying focused and trying to say, okay, I want to do like one thing, and I just want to do it really, really well. And it's been talked about a million times. Go read The One Thing by Gary Keller, and he talks about it. And, you know, we all have shiny red ball syndrome to some degree. Some suffer worse from it than others. I'll raise my hand and say I'm one of those that suffers worse from it. And so I want to try and know that I have my roadmap going forward, and I've surrounded myself with people, and I want to go with just one thing. Like I don't want to own 1.5 Airbnbs and then build something over here that I'm going to keep as a rental, and then own a C-class rental over here. I want to just have one thing and go really deep into it, because it's going to create that much momentum. And that's a mistake that I've made in the past, is that I haven't gone over. I've done it over multiple kind of asset classes, and I'm going to stop that, David. So that's my number 3 thing. And I know that other people chase shiny red balls. And so just know that you're not alone. David, where are you at? Number 3.
Yeah, I think that's really good as well. Clark, there's so many people have diversified themselves into obscurity, and that they're getting nothing done whatsoever. You know, I look back at all the businesses I've ever had, Clark, and you know, I always did things with people, right? I always had, partners and things, and that's for a multitude of reasons. Probably because of the skill sets that I personally lacked, maybe our friendship, our camaraderie. Because one thing's for sure, Clark, working for yourself as a solopreneur, as I say, or an entrepreneur, it can be terribly lonely. Even if you have a bunch of staff below you, they're not your friends.
Yeah,
they're your staff, right? And so my kind of habitual nature really was to always, when I was looking to do something, was always to find a partner to do it. And in hindsight, when I'm really honest, a lot of the partnerships that I have been involved in, I was just carrying dead weight. I carried a lot of dead weight. I carried a lot of people. I made a lot of people money, but I was kind of working to their tune. And I really feel, and I mean this sincerely, and this is going back for 25 or more years, I wished I'd have just done more stuff on my own. I wished I'd just had the courage to do more things on my own, and not immediately, oh, I've got an idea, or I've got a thing, or I want to invest in this, let me go look for partners. So somewhat different to what you just said. It's like you were just saying, well, who does the thing, not how do I do it? I definitely agree. And we're both actually chiming onto each other a little bit there, in that, I don't think you always need to go into a partnership to do something. Just go and exchange your money for their time. Go find the expert at that one thing that you want to do. Set up a website. You don't need to go in a partnership with somebody who's just good at websites.
Right.
If you have, if you, let's say, lack data entry and financial acumen, hire a good bookkeeper and an accountant. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to go into business with a financial person. If you don't like real estate contracts, hire a transaction coordinator. You don't need a partner, because in hindsight, as I look backwards, I have been limited by a lot of the partnerships, because then you're always limited to your weakest link. You can only move as fast as the partnership wants to move. And I can look back to two or three of my partnerships in my past that they didn't share the same growth aspirations. They had different exit strategies than me. And when those partnerships did expire, I'm left picking up the pieces. And that's definitely one thing I would definitely change. Going backwards is I would have entered less partnerships and done more transactional relationships with the skill sets that I was lacking.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. I think that it's certainly something too, where it's different. Like for me is the partnerships, there's the financial relationship, the partnership, the challenge that I have to get over is that, like you said, it's lonely, and I enjoy having someone there to commiserate with, to go arm in arm, because it is lonely, and I thrive around being in with other people, sharing ideas, things like that. So that's why I've always been kind of drawn to partnerships. But everyone is different, and everyone has their own way to go about things. So I certainly can see where you're coming from on that. I'm going to jump into number 4, David, and I think that I'm trying to keep these as like, for me, it's like very simple. I look back and it's not really that complicated for me, and it's actually just very simple concepts but I just needed to follow them better. And the next thing is like, if I've found the asset class, let's just say, I'm just going to say Airbnb for you. Let's just say I want to be the Airbnb guy, right? Well, I know that the next thing, number 4, is geography. I need to make sure that I am doing it in the same geography that I understand, right? So do I want to just say I'm going to go buy Airbnbs in the Southeast? I do not. I don't want any part of that, especially when you have something, let's say you're going to do an ALF, right? Well, there's all these regulations with each city, municipality. There's permitting. There's all the different things. There's just areas that are more accepting of doing Airbnbs versus areas that aren't as accepting. But you don't know that, right? If you constantly are changing the geography. And so for me, being able to focus on basically my backyard, what's easier and the least risk is being able to invest in my own backyard. I have chosen to live in an area where the supply, or where the demand for housing, the demand for jobs is higher, right? So if I lived in, Indianapolis right now, I may have a different story, but I'd probably just move because I don't want to be in 10-degree weather right now with it snowing. And I want to be wearing my Hawaiian shirt and it's 70 degrees. But regardless, if I was going to be an Airbnb person and I could take the 10-degree weathers in Indianapolis, then be the Airbnb person in Indianapolis in that backyard. You understand it. You have the relationships. The banks understand you. The local banks, you're going to get better terms. So you're going to get all this momentum. But every time that you go, I'm in Tampa, David, you're in Tampa, like, did I go buy something in Orlando or go buy something in Atlanta because it's the hot spot, right? Or I've heard so many people do great in ALFs in Atlanta, but that's great for them. But for me, I want to do it in my backyard because I want to keep removing the most amount of obstacles between me and success. And a big piece of that is being close to it and having relationships and having it in my backyard. So for me, David, number 4, it's simple, but geography, and not getting scatterbrained, shiny red ball syndrome with the geography. What say you?
It always breaks my heart when I see investors buying, 2 here, 2 there, 3 here. I'm like, that's not what it's, that's not how you diversify. To my mind, this is how you diversify. Dollar cost average over a long period of time into one market. And you might say, well, where's the diversification there, David? It's all in one market. But it's not. But it is all physically in one market. But it's over time, So the diversification is a time diversification, not a geographic diversification. So, buy $1 million worth of real estate in 1990, in 1991, in 92, 93, 94, 95, and so on and so forth, right? And obviously, could be $200,000, right? But the bottom line is I'm diversified over time, which means I'm catching properties at the top of the market, at the bottom of the market, in the middle of the market, as the bell curve gyrates. I'm diversified across the bell curve. Some of them are winners, some of them are not. But guess what? To your point, they're all in my backyard, so I can get to them all. I understand them. I don't make the same mistakes. We just had 2 storms come through here recently. Guess what? None of our houses were damaged. With next to, I'm not saying nothing. I think you had 1 or 2 that you diversified geographically. You know what I mean? If you had, to your point, if you were starting over again, you wouldn't make those mistakes.
Right, exactly.
And that's exactly what you're saying, right? It's like, so I diversified over time, but I'm highly concentrated. It actually brings me on to my next one. All right. So looking back, and this is for every investor out there, when I look at my portfolio, You make your money in real estate through appreciation. If you think that chasing cash flow deals into low growth markets is a good idea, I contest that you're wrong, right? I've seen people do it. I've seen people scale into that, where they go out and they'll buy C-class apartment buildings at scale because they're higher cash flow. They're not. They don't work. They end up retreating and they end up losing their asses, right? Where I have made most money, where the people who are doing 1031 exchanges, I rarely see somebody doing a 1031 exchange out of a low-cost cash flow market. I never get a call from somebody saying, hey, David, I need to do a 1031 exchange. I'm selling a $130,000 property in Cleveland that I bought for $120,000. Right? I made some cash flow along the way, but I got a new roof. The cash flow is not there. I'll tell you where I hear the 1031 exchanges. People who bought in New York, people who bought in Boston, in Chicago, in LA, in California in general, high growth markets here in Florida. People are doing 1031 exchanges because they've made a lot of money in appreciation. So, throughout my career, taught the word appreciation in terms of a sales pitch. So let's say you came to me and say, hey, David, I'm thinking about buying a house. Why would this be a good house to buy? Well, I'll walk you through the cash flow. I'll walk you through inflation. I'll walk you through depreciation and cost segregation. I'll walk you through all of the reasons that are tangible, real, and now. So that are provable, because I've always been massively concerned about my reputation. But I have literally never sold a home and said, this will have good appreciation. Why? Because it's not realized yet. And so it sounds like it's hocus pocus. So you can talk about cash flow today because it's real for a minute. You could talk about, depreciation and cost segregation and, inflation today. The reality is that almost all wealth in real estate is generated by being in very, very high demand areas and holding them long enough for those high demand areas to do what they do. And so that is something I'd have done and I realized sooner. And I'd have talked about sooner with people. So in my desire to be paired as being credible, I never talked about it. But in hindsight, I wish I had. You make your money in real estate by being in a super neighborhood, great, high growth place, and you hold it over time. That's where the money is made. If anyone tells you otherwise, get them on the podcast with me and we'll have a powwow about it. But I wish I had, bought those no cash flow or high quality deals sooner, because I might not be on a podcast today, because I'd have owned a lot more really high quality inventory rather than quote unquote playing it safe sooner and earlier. So I'd have bought high quality real estate much earlier in my life, Clark.
David, you'd still be on the podcast because you'd still be bored to tears anyways. You and I both know that I don't care how many nice assets you bought in 2011 that you still own, you'd be sitting on your hands for 5 seconds at the beach and be like, all right, let's go talk real estate. So I don't buy it for a second. So
it's not like it's not like this podcast is making us any money. It's a net loser, everybody. If you think you're going to set up a podcast and make money out of it, you're probably wrong.
We won't be doing an episode anytime soon on like how to grow your podcast to replace your W-2 income, right?
No, that's not happening. We've one left. Clark. What's your final? What's your final nugget of regret, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the final nugget is being able to look back and say, all right, now I have the vision. I've got the surrounding people, I've got the geography, I've got the asset class, right? I've got the thing, right? The widget that I want to go in, whether it's buying businesses or Airbnbs or fix and flips, whatever it is, but it's the one thing, right? Now I get to all put it into action. However, instead of just loosey-goosey saying, I'm going to do this today and that tomorrow, it's like, how do I hold myself accountable by giving myself KPIs, surrounding myself in groups and masterminds where I can get around these people and stare at them once a week or once every week and say, guys, I said I was going to do A, B, and C. And then I come back in a week or two, whether the coach, masterminds, whoever it is, and say, hey, Clark, did you do that thing? It's not, and I want to be able to say, yeah, I did that thing. And guess what? I've got a great victory to celebrate because I did the thing, right? So I have to take action, but I have to manage that action and hold myself accountable. And a big piece of holding myself accountable is putting myself in with different groups, with different people that I have to meet with, physically look at, and be shameful if I didn't do the thing, right? And I need to feel shamed, right? It's why I like having a personal trainer at the gym, because he's like, well, what did you eat yesterday? And I say, I ate a large pizza. Well, I'm going to feel like shit, right? So maybe I shouldn't eat the large pizza. But if I didn't have the guy to tell me not to do it, then it would be easier to eat the large pizza. So I think that being able to do the action, David, and then being able to fail quickly, like do the action, I'm going to make mistakes, right? But the quicker I can make mistakes, you hear the slogan, fail forward. The quicker I can fail forward, I'm going to be able to learn the lesson and then become more successful. So for me, the last thing that all leads to that is doing the damn thing that I said I was going to do, but now with a better roadmap, surrounding myself with better people in the right area with the right asset class.
And what's the actionable event that creates that accountability there? Are you talking about joining specific mastermind groups? What are you talking about?
Yeah, I mean, there's, you can go and get business coaches. I talk to people that have literally business coaches, and they probably meet weekly. Different masterminds kind of have built-in coaches. So for right now, for me, I'm a member of a couple different masterminds, and then you're in with different groups. So I'm in like an accountability group that meets once a week. So I think the easiest thing is to pay your way into groups around like-minded people, and that's what masterminds in. I'm in a group called Action Academy with Brian Lubin. There's another one that we're in that me and you were both in, David, Freedom Framework with Sam Silverman. I'm in the Capitalist Cartel. So I'm in 3 groups that I pay for that I meet with weekly, and they're all a little different. They all have their pros and cons, but I think that just surrounding myself with people that are going to hold me accountable makes it easier to not fail and to be able to do the actions that are required to be successful.
My last one is a little bit off the left field here. This is like things that we look back at our lives. Oh, I wish I'd done this differently or whatever. And for me, I'm 53, and this is somewhat debatable, but I wish I'd had my kids sooner. I wish I'd had my kids sooner, earlier in my life. Now, wish, whatever, But I can look back and say, well, most of the reasons I didn't have kids sooner, I can make all the excuses I want. But what it was is I didn't have the financial confidence to do so, because I just said that, I've always been like, if I want to buy a car, guess what I do? I save up and buy the car.
Right.
If I want to buy a house, guess what? My first 2 houses, I saved up and I bought the house. Right? I was talking to a friend of mine this morning. He's like, he's got portfolio, he's got no debt. He's like, well, maybe I should use debt. I don't know. He likes not using debt, right? But I've always been if I want something, I save for it, right? And I took that approach to having kids. When I was like 32 and I was fluxing between careers and I was doing this and I was doing that, like, now's not the time. You know what I mean? I don't have it saved up for it, right? And I thought kids were instantly going to cost me $10 million. You know what I mean? Like that's in my brain.
I thought that was.
And that's what you hear. Like, kids are going to cost you, $1.2 million before they're 18. Well, I always thought that was in year 1. You know what I mean? It's like they're going to cost you $1 million the moment they show up. But guess what? The first year of their lives, they drink milk from mom for the most part. So it actually costs you anything, really, And they're almost like a construction project. You just like their stage payments, And so they only really cost you, you're only at full tilt when they're like 18 to 22, And so, I probably would like to go back to my earlier self and tap myself in the shoulder and say, David, have more confidence in yourself in the future. Don't like, well, I can't afford to have kids. I can't afford to get married, or I can't afford to do that first house. I can't afford, if you're showing up every day, if you're that person, and you show up every day and you might not have it figured out right now, You might not have it all figured out. You might have a little bit. But if you keep showing up and you keep listening to podcasts like this and you keep listening to what Clark just said, make a vivid vision, join the right groups, right? Get into mastermind groups, have accountability partners, take care of yourself, invest in some ETFs that are broad-based really soon in your life. Like, take the things that we talked about and you will just generate that confidence. But there's so many people hitting their 40s now and they're freaking out and they're jumping into IVF and they're jumping into because they just lacked that confidence. And you could do what I do. Just, I was, 36 and my wife was 26 and we dated and, I had kids my first child when I was 44 and she was 34, So, hey, that's that's one way to play it. But I'm the oldest dad at the ball game. You know what I mean?
David, I'm going to try and catch you, my friend. As a 41-year-old, no kids. If I have kids, I'm going to be the guy in the walker at the soccer game, telling them to get off my lawn.
Yeah. So. How many of your buddies have kids in Tampa right now? All these super, super successful people.
Yeah, I can think I've got one or two good buddies that have kids, and 80% of them have no kids.
Yeah, they just don't, right? It's not on their horizon. They're busy, making a thing. I'm a better dad because I have them now. I've used the term before. It's like you can have them younger when you have the energy, or you can have them older when you've got the money. But I genuinely thought that they were going to cost $10 million. I'm not saying I wish I had them when I was 18, right? I'm not going down that road either.
Yeah.
But I definitely wished I'd had the confidence and the stones and just the personal faith in myself to have had them maybe, in my, a little bit earlier, maybe in my mid to late 30s. So then, I'd be 53 now and I'd have college age kids and I could see the end of the tunnel, if you will. But, I'm still in the early stage darkness of having young kids. And I'm joking, of course, you can hear me saying it. But it is something that, I would go back and change if I could, So with that being said, Clark, we're at 40 minutes. They were 10 things. Do you have any bonus ones that you want? Is there something now we've talked about? Is there one thing you'd throw in as a bonus one? It's okay if you don't.
I don't think I would change anything, right? Like I enjoy every day waking up. There's challenges. Just knowing that going forward, the things that we've talked about, things I talked about, certainly some of the things that I'm going to steal from you. I can't go back and have a child earlier, so there's nothing I can do about that. But just knowing that every day is a new day, and it's like, how do I organize my day to be as efficient as possible and take these things and actually implement them and make them happen as quickly as I can. And as much as we're giving these things advice to you guys, the listeners, is that we're giving it to ourselves, right? As we're staring at this laptop screen right now, I'm talking to myself just as much as I'm talking to anyone that's listening to this podcast. So there's nothing I can do to change it, David, but I can change the future, and that's on me. And it's no one else's problem. It's no one else's issue to deal with. And I'm excited to kind of implement these things going forward and reaching that vivid vision, my friend. So what about you? And take us out.
Well, listen, if you thought that this was a useful conversation and you know anyone in your life that might benefit from this, say, you know what, I've got a 22-year-old son, daughter.
Yeah.
I'm going to send them this episode just so that they can hear somebody else validate, these kind of things to think about in a brain of a 22-year-old or your 34-year-old son or your friend who's trying to figure stuff out. Please share this episode. That's why we do it. We're not selling anything. We don't have an agenda. We're genuinely just sit here every week and we put stuff out because we enjoy it. To Clark's point, it's like, got to do something and I don't play golf.
No.
So we enjoy putting this stuff out. And it's really, really satisfying when somebody comes back to us and says, you know what? I hear that episode you did on fill in the gap, and it made a big impact on me. And that's really rewarding for us. So if you've enjoyed this and you enjoy our conversations, send this to one person, just one person, so we can see that number, that the tiny little number on on our listenership dial go up. And scroll down, rate and review us. There's a little scroller on the device that you're listening to right now with stars on it. Give us 5 of those stars, right? And then there's a little thing we say, write a review. You could just write a review, say, I enjoy the guys talking, whatever it might be. But that is the only thing that we will ever ask that you do. So if you've enjoyed this, somebody who could benefit from this conversation, could you forward it to them? And if you're up for it, give us a review. And that's all I've got to say today. Clark?
I love it. Everyone, thanks so much for listening. And we're going to continue to keep bringing you more content, more high-quality content, more high-quality guests. And we look forward to it. Thanks as always. We'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone. Well, that is a wrap for today, folks. We hope that this episode shed some light on the complexities of the real estate market and kind of really gave you some actionable insights. Because remember, you navigate the world of property investment, it requires more than just luck. You're going to need strategy, you're going to need knowledge, and of course, you're going to need a little dash of courage. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review on any of the podcast platforms that you listen to and YouTube as well. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Burn Your Boats Wealth. And leave comments, talk to us about things that you want us to talk about or things you disagree with us on. We appreciate all that type of insight. Your support really fuels our fire to bring you even more valuable content. So we appreciate you, we appreciate the support, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to the Burn Your Boats Wealth podcast with Clark Lunt and David Shaw. We would love to hear from you. Please reach out at contact@burnyourboatswealth.com with comments, questions, and if you have a topic you would like Clark and David to discuss on an upcoming episode. We would very much appreciate it if you took the time to rate and review Burn Your Boats on your favorite podcast listening app, and make sure to follow and share on social media. Content in Burn Your Boats Wealth podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not legal or financial advice. Please review our legal disclaimer at burnyourboatswealth.com. Thank you and have a great day.